Atlanta to the ground. Yeah, but Atlanta rose up. Because of black folk. Atlanta gonna turn them ashes into gold. This Ali fight, the perfect puzzle.
I love the dynamic of you two on screen together. Like, y'all are business partners plus. So I was going to ask, for each one of y'all, Taraji, we can start with you. What was the most fun part about bringing y'all's dynamic to the screen?
I love working with Kevin, first of all. Second, I always told him that he's going to kill it in drama. And to me, I love his performances. This, to me, is by far my favorite dramatic performance of his because it's so far removed from everything else that I've worked with him in and everything else that I've seen him in. And this is the direction that me, as his friend and a fan of his work, I want to see him go more because I really believe comedians make better dramatic actors. Or good, great dramatic actors. I shouldn't say better. I don't want to look like a competition. But they make really good dramatic actors.
I think, too, you know, the beauty of real friendships, real relationships, work days aren't work. And, you know, the longer days don't feel like the longest. It's having the rapport and having that wherewithal that your energy is important to me, mine is important to you. And let's just make sure that at the end of the day, the thing that we're flourishing in is all based off of our relationship at the top. So being honored enough to say that that's my sister, my friend, and somebody that I get excited if I can work with on what we're working in or what we're doing, those are like the bigger aspects of the project. And to all parties that are involved, you know, I think outside of Sam, who I know very well, I didn't share the screen with Sam at any point, but there was connectivity between us all some way, some shape, somehow. So day one on set, when we all were there at the same time, it was a dope thing. It was a dope visual to look that way, that way, that way, that way, and have visuals of greatness on different layers and different levels. And I think that's the beauty of what we have in a completed project. We have a premium IP with a visual like component of culture, color, and then you layer that with a true story. It doesn't get better. It really is something special for our time, and I think for all of us in our careers to say that we were able to do together.
Yeah, Kevin, I was also going to ask you about another scene partner that you get to share some real cool dynamics with, and that's Don Cheadle's.
That son of a. That son of. Wait, what were you going to say? I'm sorry. Did I jump the gun? Did I jump the gun?
He had some words for you as well. When I talked to him, he had some words for you. So just curious how that dynamic was, and like, what did you like about him, or what did you like least about him as a scene partner during this show?
He's so good. That's what we like least.
I can joke all day, and I mean, people know the dynamic of me and Don's relationship. You know, we're very silly with one another, but there's a high level of credibility when people's name are on a piece of paper, right? And from Sam to Raji and Don and Terrence, the credibility is amazing. But Don, we have been trying to figure it out for a very long time. So the Peacock interview on Hart to Hart, where I interviewed Don, and people got to see our rapport for the first time, that's what started the conversation for me and Don.
Oh, you mean when you called him old?
When I said the damn.
You called him old.
Well, I said
you called him old.
I said what other people were thinking.
Old.
I said what people were thinking.
Called him old.
I said what people were thinking.
Old.
And in that interview, we discovered, man, we gotta really do it and prioritize it. And this is what we landed on. This was the opportunity that we felt was best. And the JD and Chicken Man back half story is, I mean, it's exactly what it's supposed to be. It's a great relationship, but great growth in the relationship. You understand why they ended up where they ended and how that friendship between the two of them is one that they held on to after. Like me and Don's discovery of where we could go and what we can do. It was refreshing, it was educating, and for me, definitely a notch on my belt of honor to say I got to work with the guy. Don't tell him I said any of that. Don't tell him I said none of that.
I'll tell him.
You just leave it at, you son of a, leave it at me saying that. Yeah, that's what you leave it at.
Taraji, quickly, last question for you. What did you know about this project going into it, and what was the most exciting thing about it, if you didn't know that much about the story?
I knew nothing about the story. I asked, was it real? And they said yes. And they were like, oh, there's a podcast. And I listened to the podcast and it blew my mind. Then I started thinking back in my own life and I was like, damn, because I remember 1994, I had my son, his godmothers moved to Atlanta, godparents moved to Atlanta. And I went to visit and, they had quit their job and went down there for entrepreneurship and they were making money, bought this big old house and everybody was making money. I'm saying all these black people making all this money. And I didn't realize that was all stemming from this 1970s heist. I didn't figure that out until I read this script because I knew nothing about it. So I was excited to bring this story to life because I Freak Nick was down there doing, this big boom. And so now it all makes sense.
Look here, Officer Mayberry. I know you're supposed to be in charge of my security, but you really think bringing me up here with these sticks and ticks is going to keep me safe?
Detective Hudson.
I ain't hear you say something.
Detective Hudson.
Oh.
That's my name, son. Just thought I'd clear that up for you.
Gentlemen, I am thrilled to be talking with you all. I think the thing that was most exciting for me about watching this was seeing Muhammad Ali brought to life, Dexter. Wow. Cool. My question to you, and Don, feel free to jump in, is the dynamic between y'all in this show is so interesting to me, given where Muhammad Ali was in his life at that time. So how did y'all base that dynamic that you have with one another?
I didn't know Don was going to be JD when I auditioned. So for me, I really had to kind of start thinking about the Ali that I wanted to bring to screen for this show, first and foremost, and kind of craft that independently on my own. And then when I got to Atlanta and started working and got into the gym and still training and still boxing choreo, but then saw this guy's name on the call sheet and my manager texted me, he's like, Don Cheadle is your JD. I knew that I would have an artist who I was not only inspired by, but could collaborate with. And really use that opportunity, man, to just kind of sink my teeth into how deep I wanted to go with Ali, but how much I wanted to create with Don Cheadle too.
The script is the Bible, so we're going off of the characters that were created and, brought to life by Shaye, but our showrunner and creator. But I was glad to get on the set and find, that Dexter worked in a similar way that I worked. And a lot of these things that you see over the course of the episodes are things that we discovered on the day. We worked it out together with the writers and the directors, Craig Brewer at the time, to figure out who these guys would be at the end of their arc. So that was also a fun, discovery period. Just a process. And
then Don, you also have another great scene partner with Kevin Hart, and I enjoyed that dynamic as well. Why is he the perfect guy for you to play off of with these characters?
I mean, it's more about me mitigating, insufficiencies that he has, I guess is the best way to put it. The deficit of working with Kevin Hart, I had to overcome.
The low level.
It's a low ball.
Yeah, it's a low ball.
Yeah.
For the groundedness that you...
I had to keep bringing this dude back.
Baseline.
On the days he showed up.
Yeah.
Half of that is CG, and, he's not there most of the time. It's mostly me and green screen. But
this is all the time, every day, by the way.
I did what I could. I hope it came off because, God, it was really a struggle.
And that's one thing I will say about Kev is Kevin, when you look at this call sheet and you read the script and you see Samuel L. Jackson, Don Cheadle, Terrence Howard, Taraji P. Henson, you say, who's going to be number one? And it's Kevin Hart. And you're like, what? And then you watch it or you work with him and then you're like, oh, because Kevin is the kind of guy who can captain a ship like that. There's a lot of personalities, a lot of talent, a lot of energy, and you need to have somebody who can match that and predominantly also be in their own space. Kev does that really well at a very low.
It's the drugs. It's the drugs.
It's good to see Kevin finally getting work after all these years.
I know, poor guy, right? He's in everything but a coffin.
I do want to go back to Muhammad Ali and Dexter, the way you played it. What was the biggest challenge with playing an iconic figure like Muhammad Ali? The physical aspect, the speech pattern. What was it for you?
Definitely the speech pattern and the dialect. The physical part was part of it. But predominantly, really, it's the fact that everybody has their own idea of this man. And so for me, how can I make everybody's idea feel like it's personal to them? How can I make this performance feel personal to them?
Well, I think the personal way you did it, if I can interject, is that you make it personal to you.
That's a fact.
And then it becomes universal. Do you know what I mean? There are better Ali impersonators than Dexter, you know, but not concerning yourself with doing some perfect spot on impersonation, but rather really try and find the truth of who that character is. And that other stuff is filigree that sits on top of that.
Yeah.
But, you know, this isn't doing a Vegas show and finding an Elvis impersonator. This is finding an actor to bring those things about Ali that are the truths that we need for this storytelling to work. And I think Dexter did a great job of that.
Thank you, Don. I got something for you, bro. Thank you, man. I want to make sure.
And this is the best part.
Yeah, this is I made him to say that. No,
Real 100.
But that was it. It was that. It was providing the humanity and the levity behind Ali. And just as an artist, that's my job, to provide the most realistic performance that a person could watch. And that's what I wanted to do.
What's your name, darling?
Lena.
You three gonna be acting like our distinguished hosts. Now everybody rest up. It's gonna be a long night.
I wanted to ask both of y'all, and Chloe, we can start with you, just about the intensity of those after-party fight night scenes. They were so well done. What will y'all take most from filming those scenes? Because it was like such a huge cast and so much going on.
I had the most fun doing those, and down to like doing the stunt coordination with Taraji and, you know, like practicing getting hit and using my hairpin, my little weapon. Like, it was just so much chaos. And to know that it was crafted so beautifully so that each story still stood out on its own was really, really cool. And honestly, even down to the background, like they were giving me energy to keep going as we are like doing these intense things during the scene. Like even just their energy, it was like helping feed off of for what we had to do the best. So
yeah, Sinqua, I was going to say, like, everybody in those scenes came to play, even the background folks. So, like, you the energy's up the whole time. What from those scenes will you take with you as an actor going forward?
Similar to what Chloe's saying, I think that it takes everybody to make something successful, right? Because that's just a great highlight, is the fact that the background artists that came and played with us, they gave so much. You know, there's the scene when everyone sees McKinley establishing that this is a robbery. And I would see people like, I'm looking for Chloe because we have to have a moment. I'm looking for Taraji because we have to have a moment. But I would scan the room, and the other background artists, their eyes are still so intricately invested, you know, and that's just the mark of really great storytelling, and everyone comes together to help make something really good. And if you want to see something dope, everyone needs to be a part of it.
Yeah, I'm a huge boxing fan, so I knew a little bit about this story, and obviously Muhammad Ali had disappeared in his life coming to it. I wasn't nearly as familiar with McKinley Rogers. So what was the most important part of that character for you to express, to have come across on screen?
Just to find a redemption. You know, I think that when people enter into circumstances where you're doing something that is criminal, it is a robbery, it is an armed robbery, now we get the opportunity to work backwards. Right, and now I have to redeem him so that the audience can relate to him and understand why he was in those circumstances. The same thing that makes McKinley a robber is the same thing that makes someone want to become an accountant, right? To pay their bills and to survive and take care of their family. So that was the fun part. That's the journey, and that's what attracted me to want to do it.
Yeah, and Chloe, for you, you know, you mentioned like these huge ensemble pieces that you got to do, but there's so many great individual pairings in this show, and it really attracted me to it, watching y'all and Taraji P. Henson. So when it's just you two, what was it like working off of somebody like that?
I really have to give you your props because it was so nice sharing a story with someone that you could feel vulnerable and safe with, even though we hadn't known each other prior. So it was really nice knowing that the foundation was there. And it's like, our characters have this shared desperation. And I think like even just by looking in each other's eyes, it was like we already got it. So that was something that is rare and also pretty beautiful. Yeah.
That was beautiful. The answer itself.
Yeah, like I was like that, right? Like
So here's a really fun question. I was thinking like watching y'all, because like it transports you back to 1970, even though I'm in 2024 watching it. So what was like your favorite 1970s-ish detail of the show that you're like, oh, cool, I'm back in the 70s now?
You said the diner. The diner was
The
good.
diner.
The diner was good.
The diner, like that wasn't a built set.
Yeah.
And it felt like we were in the 70s.
Yeah.
No lie.
Yeah.
And I really loved my little waitress costume and like pulling up on you and being like, what you want, Mac? I just felt like we were really in the 70s.
It helped us really drop in and tell the story. There was the set that Chloe was talking about is this diner scene that kind of introduces how she's going to potentially join the journey. But that wasn't anything created. We still had that. And that was a live location. And it was so authentic, down to the tables, down to like the shelving and everything. And I remember when you walked around and you had to go get the old coffee from the coffee maker. And it was just like, man, this is the 70s. Like we're in it. Like we're really in it. You know, they did a great job.
Whatever you gentlemen need while you're here in Atlanta, I'm your man.
Who are you? You are a party host?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chicken Man?
Guilty as charged, yeah.
I'll be honest with you. People ask me, what is it that a producer does, you know, in this medium? People are familiar with directors, writers, of course, actors. This is what a producer does, is do the best you can to pull together what you hope is going to be the best talent that you can attract with whatever the project is. But a producer's dream is when you actually pull together a cast on this level. This is the ultimate level when you think, and I've been very fortunate to work with some amazing ensemble cast, but I will tell you, I have never been quite as excited as I was when I walked on set and we had all our big dogs, as I call them, on set, ready to rock, ready to roll, and everybody, you know, when you have folks at this level, there is a very healthy competition because nobody wants to be outdone. So everybody took it very serious. Everybody's work ethics were on display. But as a producer, it's a dream, man. It really, really is to have this caliber of talent at your disposal.
And one of the biggest problems that you have with producers, most producers, 90% of them are bowfingers. 90% of them. And therefore, people don't want to show up for them and they don't want to show out for them. But when you're somebody like Will, and I say this honestly, that has built a reputation of 30 years, you know, of me watching other people that has worked with him. And then actors talk to each other. And they're like, oh, yeah, yeah, he's a jerk. No, he's beautiful. He's beautiful. He works with you. He's an honest man. He doesn't lie. And most producers are out there lying. You can't really take their word. So therefore, it makes it easier for artists, whether you're a writer, whether you're a cinematographer, whether you're even as a gaffer. All of these people will trust the producer that sets the foundation and that has built this life of excellence. So that's what makes a difference. If more producers were like you, then there would be more greater projects, you know, around the world. But most people are bowfingers, and they're not men of their word. And that's what sets you apart, and that's what everyone has spoken about you for 30 years. Wow. And that's why my first time being able to work with him was like, when he asked, I was so happy that I get to do this with him. So it's just the association of being with good people that makes great projects.
Know what see? See a bad mother.
Cadillac, there's a sensitivity about him because he was jovial, very jovial. You know, he loved his father. I wish I could have had more information, but knowing the relationship between him and his father, and seeing how people loved him, the fact that he was a great ball player, all of those little aspects, but then to have that darkness inside of him, you know, that you couldn't even reach the pit of his hole. You know, that I really liked. And how do you balance the jovial nature, you know, and the betrayal of somebody that's so loyal to somebody? It's just, I don't want to say too much, but I loved who Cadillac Richie was. He's the first person that I've ever really wanted to wear a wig for or do anything like that for. So I just wish that there was more Cadillac Richie out there.
Know what see? See a bad mother.
Well, I've known Sam since I was 8 years old. You know,
wow.
He used to
I
be
didn't know
the
that.
doorman inside of Manhattan Plaza. My grandmother lived at the plaza, and I spent the summers there.
Wow.
You know, so he's watched me grow up and watched me getting in trouble. So, but this was our first time really, really getting to work together. And he, you know, he just kept telling the same old stories that we had heard growing up. And you love the sentimentality of this simple person, you know, loud voice, but he comes from a very sincere place in his heart.
You know, for Sam, he obviously he was like the grounding. You know, he was really the anchor of this whole thing. I mean, in front of camera, behind the camera. One of the things that was so interesting is that, as you mentioned, he was in Atlanta at this time. He knew this story. He knew it very specifically. When we first talked to him, he said, I was there when this happened. He would come to set on days when he wasn't working just to see how well we were doing at recreating, at putting in nuance, at being authentic to that time period. He showed up when we were shooting a scene at the actual house where the big heist happens. And he said, you know what, my wife grew up 2 blocks from here. This was her neighborhood. I remember this. She and I got married at the church down the street. He came when we shot at the Atlanta University Center at Morehouse College, and he said, you know what? I walked these grounds. My dorm was right there. This is where we locked up the administrators. A lot of people know the stories that, you know, as part of a student protest, he locked up some administrators in a building there. He said that was the building right there where we shot it. Having him on set and having him, number one, share those stories like Terrence is talking about, where he was able to say, let me tell you how it really happened. Number one was very cool, but number two, he would tell us, you're doing it right. You're getting it right. Like when Sam gave the thumbs up, when he approved, because he was the one person there who actually lived it, that meant a lot to us.
Sam just didn't like the stand-ins doing the blocking for us. Because sometimes the directors would be trying to get the shot lined up, and we would be on our way, and they would use the stand-ins, you know, to do the blocking out. And he was like, dude, why don't you have them play the part too? You know, let the actors do their job, then the stand-ins can follow him. He's someone that is a stickler for the creative arts and for doing it the right way. It has to be done the right way. He doesn't care about anything else, and there's a lot to take from it. And he also gave us a lot of tips on how to get paid properly in this game, which I'm really happy about. I can't share it with Will right now.
Yeah, what was some of those tips, brother? Let me put me up on that game.
Don't nobody with Frank Moten.
Groovy, baby.
Them robberies won't see the next sunrise.
Did Chicken Man rob me?
They gonna kill me.
They are reckless.
I have to clean my name. Get ready. This here is gonna be a night that we never gonna forget.
It was exhilarating and daunting. I mean, it's exhilarating because I'm a fan. It's just not only do we have like this great cast, I'm actually like a huge fan of every one of these actors and are kind of like have been obsessively watching their work for years. So for me, there's one element of like being this kid with all of these, you know, new high-end toys that I get to play around with. But then another end, it's like daunting because we have to create material that rises to the level of Don Cheadle, Sam Jackson, Taraji P, Henson, and Terrence. And I really felt like we did that, and we did that in a way of just like I feel like every one of these characters is tailored to what they do best, their cadence, their rhythms, but also kind of a bit of a thing we really haven't really got a chance to see any of them do. You know what I mean? Or do pretty often. So it was, like I said, it was like exhilarating, but also, you know, daunting because it's a challenge, you know, with like, and it's a dream. I've always wanted to like make something with an iconic cast like this. But then once you get that dream, you gotta like, once you get the Ferrari, you gotta drive that bad boy. So it was amazing. It was an amazing experience.
Know what? See a bad mother.
For me, what was fun was just creating the atmosphere because again, Ali, this makes this story so dynamic. This show, there's so many crazy, interesting elements of this show that can be their own shows. But just the idea of like Ali's coming off of, this kind of 2.5-year exile for not joining the military effort. And this fight was a huge deal for him, but it's also a huge deal for Atlanta. And the one thing I wanted to create was like this tension that's happening in the audience of just like, there's kind of like a class divide. In the upper levels is more like working class and primarily African-American citizens. And then below was a lot of celebrities and rich folk and primarily Caucasian folks. So I wanted to kind of, but create the kind of atmosphere around Ali. Like he was not a popular figure at this time. So for me, that was the thing that was fun to me, of just creating this moment, like the walk up to the fight. Seeing the atmosphere of people like rooting against Ali and rooting for Corey and vice versa. And that was what was interesting to me in terms of just like exploring that from a nuanced perspective. Atlanta is almost like every other character in this show in that Atlanta is at an inflection point and Atlanta is trying to define itself for this kind of new time in our country, because Atlanta is coming off of, it's 1970, so we're coming off the civil rights movement, we're coming off of Jim Crow, we're coming off of like multiple leaders being assassinated. And in this moment, as a southern city, it can go any way, but Atlanta chooses to redefine itself from a commercial perspective. And I think Atlanta is very much like this aspirational. It's like somebody that Chicken Man is, to me, the embodiment and the representation, and Frank Moulton to a certain extent as an antagonist. Both are kind of like the embodiments of Atlanta at this time of like, we're at an inflection point. I got a dream and I'm working my butt off to get it. I'm trying to redefine myself. Yeah, there was definitely some more. There was a bit more story specifically with JD, JD Hudson and his family and his wife. There was more story there that we just didn't have the real estate to really explore. You'll kind of see it. You kind of see in the first episode. You see elements of it, but we really wanted to go deeper into like the dynamic with him and his wife, but also a certain situation that actually is affecting JD at his job. We wanted to go deeper on that. We just didn't have the real estate to do it. We wrote it. We've even like got a chance to shoot some things, but when you get in that room, you got to make some tough choices, and that was a tough choice that we had to make.